Hello and welcome. This is Notibot ENG. Good evening. I'm your anchor. Today, we're bringing you the latest developments in the escalating tensions between the US and Iran. As the conflict nears its 45th day, the situation is becoming increasingly complex. The Iran war has already seen the nation's civilian lifelines turned into bargaining currency. We'll take you through the latest on the US-Iran conflict, the Strait of Hormuz blockade, and the implications of the collapse of the Islamabad peace talks. Let's get started with our news recap. As the world grapples with the escalating conflict in Iran, the humanitarian crisis unfolding there has taken a devastating turn, with civilian aid at risk. In the escalating conflict in the Middle East, the ongoing attacks by the US and Israel on Iran and Lebanon have led to a disturbing shift in the use of civilian infrastructure as bargaining currency. The most recent ceasefire, which paused threatened attacks on Iran's bridges, power stations, and other essential infrastructure, has marked a significant turning point in this regard. The most revealing aspect of the ceasefire was not the pause in hostilities, but the fact that such targets had become a bargaining point in the negotiations. According to reports on Truth Social, former U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to destroy bridges and electric power plants if Iran did not meet his deadline over Hormuz. This move was met with a strong response from Tehran, which warned Persian Gulf energy and water systems would be targeted if Iran's own civilian lifelines were hit. The region had already crossed a line, with civilian life being dragged into the logic of negotiation. This development matters because it marks a shift in the use of civilian infrastructure as leverage in conflict negotiations. Electricity, water, and transport systems are no longer treated merely as collateral damage, but are being openly framed as pressure points to be used in the bargaining process. The normalization of this doctrine has significant implications, as it blurs the lines between military coercion and civilian protection. Bridges, power stations, and desalination plants are not abstract infrastructure, but the connective tissue of ordinary life, and their destruction can have devastating consequences. This development highlights the need for greater clarity and transparency in conflict negotiations, and the importance of prioritizing civilian protection and human rights. As the world holds its breath, the situation on the ground in the Middle East continues to evolve, marking a pivotal 45th day of conflict. As the US-Iran conflict continues to escalate, a new development has emerged. In a surprise move, US President Donald Trump announced on Friday that the US will impose a naval blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, a waterway that accounts for a fifth of global crude oil supply. This decision comes just days after talks for a long-term peace plan in Islamabad, Pakistan, ended without a deal. The blockade, set to begin at 1400 hours Greenwich Mean Time on Monday, will block all Iranian ports, further straining relations between the two countries. The U.S. military has stated that the move is aimed at deterring Iran's aggressive behavior in the region. However, experts warn that the blockade could have severe consequences, including disruptions to global oil supplies, which could have far-reaching economic implications. The Strait of Hormuz is a critical waterway, with many oil tankers passing through it every day. A blockade could lead to supply chain disruptions, driving up oil prices and potentially causing economic instability. The move has already led to a surge in oil prices, with Brent crude breaching $100 a barrel for the first time in over a year. Asian markets have also been rattled, with stock prices falling in response to the news. The blockade is the latest escalation in the conflict, which has already seen tensions rise between the US and Iran, with Israeli attacks on Lebanon continuing in the background. As tensions escalate in the Middle East, a major development has unfolded in the region, sparking global concern over the future of international maritime trade. Good evening, I'm Anchor Name, and this is the CBS News World Recap. We're coming to you live from New York, where the situation in the Middle East has taken a dramatic turn. In a move that sent shockwaves across the globe, former U.S. President Donald Trump has announced a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, a critical waterway that connects the Gulf of Oman to the Persian Gulf. The decision, made in coordination with the U.S. military, is aimed at deterring Iranian aggression in the region. According to sources, the blockade was prompted by a recent attack on a U.S. naval vessel in the Gulf, which Iran has denied responsibility for. The incident has heightened tensions between the U.S. and Iran, with Washington accusing Tehran of supporting terrorist groups and conducting attacks on American interests. The Strait of Hormuz is a vital shipping lane, with thousands of barrels of oil passing through it every day. A blockade could have significant implications for the global economy, with oil prices potentially skyrocketing in response to disruptions in supply. The move has been welcomed by some, including U.S. allies in the region, who see it as a necessary measure to counter Iranian aggression. However, others have expressed concerns about the potential consequences of the blockade, including the impact on global oil supplies and the risk of escalating the conflict. We'll continue to monitor the situation and bring you updates as more information becomes available. In a surprising statement, former U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed his views on the stalled peace talks between Iran and the international community. Negotiations between the U.S. and Iran on a fragile ceasefire have collapsed, with a 2-week truce at risk of falling apart. The collapse of talks in Islamabad, Pakistan, has left both sides at an impasse, with disagreements over the control of the Strait of Hormuz and Tehran's nuclear program. The U.S. President, Donald Trump, has stated that he doesn't care if Iran returns to the negotiating table, despite concerns that a blockade on Iranian ports is being implemented. The U.S. has threatened to blockade Iranian ports in an attempt to break the impasse, but has since backtracked on its earlier threat to entirely blockade the Strait of Hormuz. The move has sparked global concern, with oil prices rising and markets experiencing turmoil. Industry publication oilprice.com reports that Iran has exported hundreds of millions of barrels of oil since the war began, using dark transit vessels to ship oil to countries such as China. The UK has confirmed that it will not be involved in the blockade, with Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer stating that the UK will not participate in any hostile action against Iran. The US military has announced that it will commence the blockade of all of Iran's ports and coastal areas, but will allow ships to transit the Strait of Hormuz if they are traveling between non-Iranian ports. The blockade has raised concerns over the potential for global economic instability and the escalation of the conflict between the US and Iran. The situation remains tense, with both sides refusing to back down. Following a recent escalation in tensions between the US and Iran, a warning from Tehran has sparked global concern over a potential flashpoint at sea. The US has announced plans to blockade Iranian ports, with the move set to come into effect on Monday. The U.S. Central Command stated that all Iranian ports would be closed, with the exception of vessels departing from non-Iranian ports and transiting through the Strait of Hormuz. The move has been condemned by Iran, with the country's spokesperson for the armed forces, Ebrahim Zolfaghari, labeling it as piracy and a violation of the ceasefire. The U.S. had initially announced plans to blockade the Strait of Hormuz, but later backtracked, saying it would not impede movement through the waterway. However, President Donald Trump has reportedly considered resuming airstrikes on Iran, according to U.S. officials cited in the Wall Street Journal. Trump has also stated that he does not think Iran will return to negotiations, saying, "I don't care." The situation has sparked concern among European leaders, with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer describing the chaos around the vital shipping route as deeply damaging. Starmer has vowed to work with European partners to resolve the issue. The Strait of Hormuz is a critical shipping route, with over 20% of the world's oil passing through it. The move by the U.S. has raised fears of a destabilization of the region and a potential escalation of tensions between the U.S. and Iran. The situation is being closely watched by international leaders, who are seeking to prevent a wider conflict. The UN has called for calm, while the European Union has urged restraint. The move by the U.S. has also sparked concerns about the potential impact on global oil supplies and the economy. That's all for today's recap. Thank you for joining us. We'll continue to bring you updates on the Iran war as more information becomes available. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for the latest news and analysis. We'll keep you informed and up to date on the latest developments. Until next time, goodbye and stay safe.